festivals, but we need snow and ice, and we just didn't have it.
And John, the number that we've come up with here, let's talk about that. How did we arrive at what is a very big number?
Well, that is a significant number of total economic loss across the Great Lakes states from all of the loss of winter activities, $8 billion. $8 billion with a B, and we looked at all of the factors, at the number of events that were canceled. For example, in Minnesota, 15 major events and countless other local events canceled. All kinds of impacts to less snow removal businesses, so many local impacts to jobs and other factors, and some small businesses may have had to close because there was not ice fishing, there was not the cross-country skiing, and so many of those other recreational activities that draw people from many states to the Great Lakes during the winter.
John, let's take a look at this next graphic, that $8 billion. How does that compare to other disasters that we've seen over the last few years?
Well, here at AccuWeather, our experts analyze the total damage and economic impact of many different types of disasters exclusively, and you see that $8 billion, that actually is on the same order of magnitude of the impacts several years ago across the southeast from Hurricane Nicole, and not far away from the impacts from Hurricane Hillary. Of course, the Hawaii wildfire, 14 to 16 billion, and Hurricane Idalia, 18 to 20 billion across the southeast last year. So this puts this $8 billion into perspective. And what was different about this estimate is, Bernie, many times we're looking at damage that has occurred. This was a situation where there wasn't property damage. It was all economic loss.
Yeah, you know,
economic loss, as well as disaster to our trees. Our trees, our forestry receives such of a blunt whenever we don't have proper moisture, and it also creates an atmosphere of more diseases whenever you're dealing with abnormal temperatures like this. And it's just a multitude of things that you can compile onto that $8 billion that they're talking about, which would probably be on a very, very conservative note. If the truth be known, it's probably on up about twice of that, if not even more. And that's just from 1 year. Like they're talking about, a lot of the ski resorts didn't have snow this year. A lot of activity, the winter activities that they ordinarily have, just didn't occur.
Let's dig into the numbers. How warm when we say it was a year without a winter, let's take a look at some of the numbers. The first on how we rank the major cities during the winter months on how warm it was.
The numbers just stand out of the charts. Look at that. Green Bay, the number 1, number 2 warmest on record in Des Moines, number 3 in Chicago, 2 in International Falls. So across the board, a historic winter in terms of the temperatures.
And then when you take a look at the snowfall, look at these departures, John.
Same story. We did not have the cold, and so we just did not have the snow. With some locations, Marquette, Michigan, for example, 70 inches below the historic average. Green Bay, 10, almost 11 inches. Would have been even more than that if not for that late season, a couple of late season.
Let's back up right here just a little bit.
10, almost.
All right, you see we're looking at there, Minneapolis, minus 18 inches. Last year, I got a friend that lives up there that I met in New Mexico. He was worked as a firefighter, a forest firefighter. They could tell you some horror stories about fighting forest fires, and that's another thing that it creates. It creates an atmosphere pertaining to our forestry towards it being dry vegetation, similar towards what went on last year up in Canada. One contributing factor adds to another contributing factor, but this is what I'm going to say. The year before last, Bob complained to me about being basically in a refrigerator up there because they had gotten so much snow in that particular area. So whenever you're dealing with this type of abnormality, it can flip-flop just as quickly one way as it does the other, because once more, the atmosphere is hotter, that holds more moisture, the moisture goes up higher, and whenever it does release that moisture, regardless whether it's summertime moisture or wintertime moisture, by and large, it will release more moisture that can be a contributing factor in being just the extremes. Like over in the Sierra Mountains this past year, and I think the year before that too as well, they have been bombarded with some of the most deepest torrential snowfalls. We're talking snow 30, 40, 50 foot high in some of those areas, where it just basically just encaptivates the community. It encaptivates your house to the point that if you don't have special equipment up there to be able to fight against all that stuff, you're basically at the point of dire circumstances, especially if you don't have extra food, if you don't have extra water, if you don't have some extra money to be able to afford those things. So we're dealing with extreme weather events that, yes, is going to cause economical disasters in some of these areas like you wouldn't even believe. I don't even know that they put those things into the equation with their $8 billion. Like I said, the $8 billion is probably a very, very low number. It's probably a very conservative number compared to what it should be, based upon the irregularities, the weather irregularities. And we're going to see more and more of this as we get further into this.
Would have been even more than that if not for that late season, a couple of late season snow events there. But by then it was too little, too late.
And look at the Great Lakes ice coverage. That historical average in red, the black is the current or what happened this winter. We didn't have much ice cover as well. One of the lowest amount of ice coverage we've seen on the Great Lakes in recorded history. That's why we say,
in recorded history,
we say it was a year without a winter. AccuWeather Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Porter. John, thanks for breaking it down. Much more on this story. You can go over to AccuWeather.com for the latest.
All right, we're going to take you now live outside into St. Petersburg, Florida, as we've got nice weather outside right now, 72 degrees right now as we start the day. And we want to take you out to the beach over the next couple of days as we look ahead to nice weather across the southeast. So West Palm Beach exclusive AccuWeather forecast, 82 for today, 83 on Thursday.
I'll tell you something else this abnormality is going to do. This year is supposed to be the year for the Casades bugs that comes out every 7 years, and I think every 21 years another certain particular bug comes out of the ground. And this year it's supposed to be like two different species of bugs that's going to come out at the same time. What it would do with the ground warming up, it will cause the Casades to come out quicker than normal, which means the people will have to be fighting them and listening to them for a longer length of time this summer, pertaining to bug juice on your windshields and all the above. One contributing factor adds to another. I know a few years ago I was coming out of Union City going towards Reelfoot Lake, and I met two state trooper cars. I don't know what area that they was patrolling down in that area, because there ain't really a whole lot of roadway down in there, but I met two state trooper cars that were just covered in those big wing, I don't forgot now the name of the fly, but they was out at that point particular time, and they usually come out where there's still water at, and the whole front of the bumper, the grill, and you could tell by the windshield where they'd been slinging back and forth that the part where the actual wiper hit was fairly clean, but around that windshield it was like, it looked to be like a quarter of an inch thick of nothing but dead bugs, those big wing bugs. Unbelievable at the things that we're fixing to have to experience this year pertaining to the Casades. It's probably going to be overwhelming to a lot of people. So people need to embrace for that, because it's going to be bad this year, and it's going to be longer lasting this year because of the temperatures. Now, I noticed something the other day, probably about 2 weeks ago. It had rain. I mean, we got like 4 inches of rain, 3.5, 4 inches of rain, and it was slow, moderate rain. And usually slow, moderate rain, it usually takes longer for it to dry up, because slow, moderate rain has time to soak and seep into the ground even that much more longer, which makes it that much more soggier, which causes it to be more lengthy and drying up. The day that it stopped raining, which I think was on a Friday, no, it was on a Thursday, may have been a Friday, that following next day, I walked around in the yard, or didn't walk around in the yard, I actually just took notice that it was dry. My yard was dry. And I'm talking about in areas that ordinarily is soggy, that ordinarily a rain like that takes like at least 2 days, maybe 3 days before you can drive your automobile on it without taking a chance on getting stuck. Even though I've got a good grass base, it's a seasoned yard. I noticed that sogginess wasn't there, which indicates to me the ground actually warming up from the bottom, from the inside out. And the following next day, I mowed my yard. Didn't have a bit of trouble in the low-lying areas where I ordinarily would have trouble because of the sogginess. And this was only 24 hours after a 3.5 inch rain. A soggy rain that lasted about 2 days, maybe 3 days. It was a big enough rain that it caused some of our creeks and rivers to swell up. So if people are not paying close attention to the abnormalities of what we used to call normal versus abnormal in today, they're either blind or they're possibly idiots, I don't know which, in just being total climate deniers and not wanting to evolve and be realistical in the time frame that we're in right now.
Into the mid-80s by Friday, and we're staying dry with a good amount of sunshine moving on through. Historical average is 82 degrees. Maybe it's not the beach that you're heading out to today, but maybe you're going to take your dog out for a walk this morning. Weather is good to go in Atlanta, in Raleigh, and Birmingham. We are starting with some more clouds in a lot of locations, but temperatures are very mild, and we're starting off dry, but we are watching a front sliding on through. That's bringing some thunderstorms across parts of Kentucky and Tennessee, where we have more of the moisture in place. Little Rock, Nashville, Jackson, down into New Orleans. So it's getting a bit sticky out there. When we look at the dew points into the 60s and 70s, that's when the air mass is a bit uncomfortable. One of the many factors going into the accurate, the real field temperature, that gives you just a great idea of how it actually feels outside. You'll notice the increase in humidity across the Gulf Coast, but throughout Florida into the Carolinas, although temperatures will be warming up, we will be staying dry throughout our Wednesday. I mentioned a few of those thunderstorms across Tennessee and into Kentucky. We've been watching this line make its way even into northern parts of Mississippi now over the last couple of hours, where we've seen a little bit more in the way of lightning. We'll watch some more thunderstorms move on through into Missouri, into Arkansas, into Louisiana through Thursday. Out ahead of that, though, temperatures really start to warm up as we head into Thursday. Warm enough that we could be near some record territory. Look at Augusta. The exclusive accurate forecast 89. The record for Thursday is 91 degrees, and the warmth continues on Friday. We're talking about more record warmth across Florida. Take a look at Friday's temperatures. Plenty of 90s on the map. We want to go now outside into Philadelphia. Seeing some clouds out there to start the day. Nice blooms, though, on the trees. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
See, a lot of people don't even understand how come wildlife has a tendency, especially in the wintertime months, of being out in the road. And some people say,
because if you look at these next few days, it's still...
Some people say, well, it's because they're suicidal and they want to die, and they get out there to stand in front of the vehicles so the vehicles will hit them. That ain't the case. That ain't the case. Number one, they are confused. We're now in an environment that they have to adjust to, and a lot of these animals cannot adjust, not nearly as quickly as humans. because a lot of them get winter fur, and then it warms up during the winter, and then it gets cold again, then it warms up again, then it gets cold again. But a lot of these little critters, including deer, will circulate around the asphalt because the asphalt is still generating somewhere between 3 and 5, maybe even 7-degree warmer temperatures. So they're just like everybody else. Rather than stand out in the cold and shiver and shake, well, let's get over here where the heater is. Well, they don't realize by getting out there where the heater is, they're endangering their lives. That's the reason why you see a whole lot more roadkill on the roads during the winter than you will during the summer. Now, in the summertime, it has just the opposite effect. They don't want to get next to the highways because the highways are putting out that much more heat. But between the concrete and the heat and all the inventions and the gizmos and gadgets and the moving parts and the human consumption of what we're doing down here, we are literally causing this planet to implode upon to itself. And I basically use the word regurgitate, that we're seeing Mother Nature regurgitate right now because of the abnormalities that we're dealing with. I know Texas basically turns into nothing but a powder keg during the summer months because they don't have near the moisture level, because they've already drained all the moisture out of the ground by draining all the oil out of the ground down that way. Now over this way they talk about humidity, and we do here in the lower 48 here in the Ohio Valley area. We do have more of a higher moisture content, but there's actually a benefit to that moisture content, which is pertaining to people's skin. You don't have to put near as much lotion on over in this area because your skin lives in an environment that has high moisture content to it as far as humidity. To where if you go out west in Arizona, places like Las Vegas, even places in California, New Mexico, people's skin get extremely, extremely dry, which means what? Which means whenever you're 60, you could look 70 over there. Over here, if you're 60, you could actually look 50 because your skin has been moderately plenished with adequate moisture content. People don't understand these things that I talk about. They act like that I'm a lunatic. But I know what I know. And I know that the world is changing, and it's changing drastically. And if we as individuals don't either catch up or prepare for these things, we are going to see destruction on levels unimaginable. Kind of like what happened a few years ago over in Europe whenever so many people died because it got so hot over there. You keep in mind, in those areas, they're kind of like the northern continental United States, of people that don't even have air conditioning. Well, whenever you have the elderly and the weak and the sick and the young that can't handle those type of temperature differences, and it gets tremendously high, you're going to have problems as far as death and injury, lethalness that's happening all over the planet, in addition to what it's doing to the permafrost, in addition to what it's doing to the forestry, in addition to what it's doing to other things. It's causing other things to act very abnormally. Diseases, bugs. 2 years ago, the citrus area down in Florida was inundated by a bunch of bugs. Well, people think, well, the reason why you go to the grocery store and you got to pay $1 for a nice size orange today is because of the gasoline going up. That's only part of it. That's only part of it. The other part is the fact that they took a hit in the citrus department pertaining to the bugs. What's causing those bugs to come out? Because it's warmer. The bugs live longer. Now you have a different species of bugs that comes out that's even more aggressive, kind of like the beetles that's killing all the trees over in Colorado. One contributing factor adds to another. These are the components that the Native American people has always looked at and observed pertaining to our rivers, our lakes, our clouds, our storms, the dry temperatures in the summer, the cold temperatures in the winter. And whenever you start taking things out of normalcy into abnormalcy, you're going to have devastating problems, not just economically, but also with people's health and trees and citrus and bugs and all the above. So these climate deniers that are still on this kick towards being climate deniers, as far as I'm concerned, they are deliberately trying to manipulate the people, which tells me that they wouldn't know the truth if they was to stumble over it. Because you have a certain group of people out there in society, no matter whether it be American society or any other kind of society all over the other 7 continents, that basically are very, very dishonest people, and they're very manipulative. They want to and to be quite frank with you, they actually get their kicks out of this. They actually think it's funny until it comes home to them. Whenever a tornado winds up in their backyard and completely destroys their house, then you'll listen to them beg and holler and plead, please help me, I'm in trouble. And I'm not trying to make fun of those people, but the very people that was making fun of all the other people the year before that got hit by tornadoes, now they're suffering the same as those people, and now they actually feel it coming home to them, coming near a neighborhood near you.
It's still going to be quite toasty, but overall, you'll have that sunshine. And come on, desert rats, this is nothing. Get out and enjoy this.
Okay, wow, she sold it. Best weather, I'm going to Denver, so staying southwest region. The reason I'm picking it, one, it's already nice today. Temperatures into the 70s, pleasant with intervals of sunshine. But it's even going to be more enjoyable because of how, can I say crappy? How crappy the weather's going to be. I said it, now I said it twice. Over the next couple of days as a bit of rain and snow move on it. So that's why Denver's my best.
Hopefully we don't have to beep you out.
Yeah.
All right, Detroit. I'm going to go with Detroit. I know you're tracking these storms yesterday, and well, they can turn pretty nasty. I'm going to go right to Detroit. Again, it is going to be quite gusty, and I'm not even going to rule out an isolated tornado.
All right, I'm going to a similar location in that moderate risk for severe thunderstorms, 70 degrees.
Detroit right now and Cleveland, those areas right now when their highs should be no more than about 45 to 53 degrees. So they're running on average 15 to 20 degrees higher than what they should be at this given time of year. We're seeing these changes only increasing, not decreasing, pertaining to the records of what we considered normal becoming abnormal.
You're talking about damaging wind, isolated tornadoes, and hail into Cleveland later on this afternoon.
Heads up, Ariella's in-laws.
Thank you.
And my Uncle Bruce in Detroit.
Uncle Bruce, yes, we want Uncle Bruce to stay safe. All right, Uncle Barry. That's just Barry. What do you have for us here?
You know, those controversial winds up above our heads that they claim the jet stream can go as high as I guess about 150 plus miles an hour. Those jet streams ordinarily are extremely cold, and of course whenever you have hot versus cold, cold versus hot, which is basically a wrestling match, and you have that simultaneously now going on every year, that's only increasing towards the abnormalities, you're going to see more tornado outbreaks or events. That's only going to drastically get worse, because basically the way that I understand it is that you'll have a massive energy of cold that'll be coming out of the north or even through the jet stream, and then you'll have another area which is very hot or warm, and those two don't mix, and basically it creates like a rolling up blanket or a rolling up piece of carpet above our heads. And in the process of all that, it creates not only instability with the air, but it also builds more moisture. Because the moisture is so intense, and because it's up in a higher atmosphere, that moisture will have a tendency of dropping quicker. Whenever it drops, just like a rolled up piece of carpet, it drops in the sense of a tornado. You're wondering why we're seeing more tornado activity. It's because of the weight barrier That's all part of the contrast in what's going on above our heads, not counting what's going on below our feet that's actually causing various continents to warm up this way. The more we see these abnormalities, and the more we see more and more ice melting that so many people was deceived about because they was only looking at the outside viewing areas of the ice forming from the satellites, and they wasn't even considering what kind of ice was below that water level that you cannot see. And some of those icebergs go in the water a mile, 2 miles deep. So it just shows you how incorrect and how carelessness that humanity has been towards not gauging these abnormalities in the way that they should be gauging them. And it's really strange that somebody such as myself has to basically come on board in expressing and explaining these things properly so that your meteorologist and your scientists can put all these things into the right equation to be able to make determinations whether or not we're going to have a super bad year or super decent or good year. With the Nino going on right now, they're saying that we're going to top off this year in temperatures like you wouldn't believe. So my advice to be with people, especially if they got any kind of medical problems at all, you need to always keep a cooler in your vehicle. Get a lot of that blue ice that you don't have to have actually ice in your freezer, providing you got one. And basically put 2 or 3 chunks of ice in your cooler every day. And make sure that you got water on board, and make sure that you keep your medicine cool, and make sure that you have other components that will be able to keep your food cooler. That way it won't go bad before you leave the grocery store and wind up going home, providing what kind of a trip that you have going home. Because whenever the dead summer heat hits, I don't care how cold a cold ice cream that you get, if you don't put it in a proper thermo insulated area, your ice cream will be melted ice cream by the time you get it home. And then you put it in the freezer and you refreeze it. You may think, well, it's still going to be decent ice cream, and maybe not. Maybe it does something to the texture of the ice cream to where the ice cream don't taste near as good of what it would have had if you would have kept it froze of its original freeze. It's kind of like meat. Meat always tastes better if you're a meat eater. A lot of people don't eat meat, but if you're a meat eater, meat tastes a whole lot better if it's never been frozen. Because once it goes through the frozen stage and then the unthawing stage, it does something to the quality of that meat to where the meat does not have near the texture base to it that it would have had if you never had a frozen that meat. And that's regardless whether it's pork, beef, chicken, whatever kind of meat. Whatever kind of meat. If you freeze it and unthaw it, it will have an effect on the quality of the taste of that meat. We're already starting to see massive amounts of irregularities even in your West Coast area up around the LA basin pertaining to seeing hurricanes that's now not just hitting the peninsula but can actually come up into this area and really do devastating damage pertaining to massive amounts of water and even wind that they're very unfamiliar with. But I do want to point something else out. I basically got an aunt that's down here on the lower lake side, on this side of the Grand Lakes, Michigan Lake. But up into this area right here, they was talking about it being abnormal this year pertaining to the Lake Michigan not freezing like it should. They actually got bombarded about 4 or 5 years ago with massive snow amounts, and we're talking like, once more, 15-foot snows. The reason why is because the sheeting of the ice had not formed on Lake Michigan, and basically the system started rolling, and the next thing you know, it turns this whole water area right here into like a snow machine, because the water isn't frozen, and it's still drawing that moisture out, and the next thing you know, some of these areas this side of Lake Michigan basically gets bombarded with massive amounts of snowfall, similar towards how other areas gets massive amounts of H2O that falls from the sky, that is absolutely unheard of to get that amount of rain that quickly in that short a time span. We're going to have to put our heads together in identifying what we are doing and what the effects of doing it or not doing it is. So whenever you have these climate deniers, and as far as I know, Donald Trump is still a climate denier unless he's changed his attitude about the world heating up. As far as I'm concerned, the climate deniers are out of touch with reality pertaining to the real reality that the world and the people on the world is facing right now. And it's really sad because it has taken this long of a time for people to start waking up. And Al Gore, seeing these events taking place even during the time that he ran for election, which was long about 2000, that tried to warn people and to give them the better edge, and basically he was punished, especially in the state of Tennessee, towards his own people not carrying him, basically causing him to lose the presidency race because of people being hard-headed and slow to adapt or slow to evolve. I've never seen it. I've never seen the stagnation on this level pertaining to people not having common sense and not being able to see the trees for the forest, as the old saying goes. I mean, you're going to have some people with their eyes open if we're going to survive this thing. And even at surviving this thing, it's still going to be tough. It's still going to be weary for a whole lot of people that's going to be going through what they're going to be going through, which once more is a verification of the authenticity of the Bible, where Christ said that whenever you shall start to see these things occurring, to flee into the mountains. That if you be up on top of a house, do not come down. If you be over here, do not retreat. To just hang on. Pray that you're worthy to escape these things, or pray that you can endure these things, because these things will be fallen upon humanity. It says in the Bible that men's hearts will fail because of fear of not knowing what's fixing to befallen up into their lives, because they will literally be able to see the forces changing right in front of their very eyes, that no, is not the handiwork of God, but the handiwork of humanity, because of the spirituality of Lucifer that has deceived or bamboozled humanity the way that they have bamboozled humanity. It all relates back to Lucifer. Any type of harm, hurt, pain, anguish, abnormality, any type of heartbreak, emotional heartbreak, psychological heartbreak, physical heartbreak, it all goes back to the troublemaker. It all goes back to the fact that you cannot deceive the nations twice into Gog and Magog, like it talks about in Revelations, unless you have successfully succeeded in bamboozling them the first time. You cannot bamboozle them again. The word again means twice, unless they've already been bamboozled the first time. That's where we are right now as a society. And people can snigger, they can laugh, they can make fun of me, they can belittle me, they can demonize me or dehumanize me all they want, but the bottom line is this: he who laughs last, I promise you, will be the one that will get the best laugh. And we know as a Christian society who's going to be the one that's going to be laughing in the supernatural world whenever all this thing comes to an end. For it is appointed unto all men once to die, and then the judgment. Please, if you've never had a true sound relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ, now is that time for you to get your proper orders in order. Please, because at any given time, the very ground that we're walking on could actually implode itself upon to ourselves, to the point that today you're here, tomorrow you're gone. Today you're here, tomorrow you're gone. None of us is guaranteed of tomorrow, because the Bible says that our hairs is numbered, our days is numbered as the hairs on top of our head. And, you know, you can be cute about that and say, well, I shaved my head, or I went through cancer radiation treatment, I don't have no hair. You can be cute about that if you want to be, but the fact of the matter is, God knew that we was going to be in this particular time zone, in this particular era, where we are today. He knew the consequences of what humanity was going to bring upon to itself way before now. That's the reason why the Lord Jesus Christ was not just some sort of a prophet, but he was actually God in the flesh, because it was God in the flesh that defied, or not the word defied, what word am I looking for? That modified the predictions of right down to the T, right down to the exactness of where we are today. All right, let's go forward real quick right here. Lord, Lord. All right, stop. Back up. Back up. Right there. Hope.
Backyard bass.
Go forward. Hope. Right there.
There it is! Big time torque! Debris! Significant damage. That's a tornado! That's a tornado! That house blown up to the right! House!
Fortunately, our Doppler radars has gotten better in the past 25 years, to the point that now they can basically see a lot of turbulence, movement, rotation, whatever word you want to use, pertaining to a lot of these storms, and they can actually give a heads up to some degree 5 to 7 minutes before it actually occurs. But in some cases, they still pop out of nowhere, and you can go from normal to abnormal within just a matter of a few seconds, that basically cannot give people thorough warning that these are areas that the science department and the weather meteorologist is trying to improve each and every day towards how can they be more accurate, and how can they view things that's going to occur before it ever occurs. And believe it or not, they've actually gotten a whole lot better at this, because whenever something is building in the United States, either on a lower or mid or whatever, because of certain factors that's coming into play, they can actually put people on alert by saying, hey, 3 days from now, we could have an outbreak of tornadoes. It's still on a 50-50 stance as far as I'm concerned. I'd rather not say hit it accurately, but they're getting better at it, to the point that if they tell you 3 days from now that stuff is going to get crazy, you need to start paying attention to what these people are saying, because they are actually turning science into a religion, because they're getting better at it every day by taking charts, patterns, putting them together. The computer now analyzes things and gives you like a layout of like 10 different scenarios that could happen, and they're fine-tuning it. They're getting better at it, and I want to commend the meteorologists in the science department in being able to save lives. That's what it's all about, saving lives.
We just jumped the pickup, took off, because didn't want to get stuck in here. All it is gone. Everything. I knew something was going to happen, but not like it did.
You can usually tell the barometric pressure will change, and usually it will get really, really intensely hot and humid right before there's a major outbreak. And you can do that just by the tenderness of your body skin and your mind and your heart towards being able to determine that, hey, this is abnormal. I really feel a whole lot of pressure here. there's really a whole lot of heat building here. You can usually tell, and the animals can sure enough tell these things. The animals can read the weather just like people can read a GPS chart on their handheld computer device.
Tornado north of Monroe, it looks like.
Where's the tornado? Not looking good.
One thing I've taken notice in my lifespan with the weather is that whenever I was just a young lad growing up, you hardly heard of a major city being bombarded. There was a few, like Louisville, Kentucky. There was an outbreak in the 70s and stuff. And today, I believe that we're seeing more tornado damage in your inner-lying cities than ever before. Now, what's contributing to that? Could be all the steel, because a lot of times your tornadoes will be attracted to places like trailer courts, because a tornado builds a lot of static electricity, which basically magnetizes itself to the point that it becomes a big magnet, and that's what's helping to suck it down on the ground. But also you keep in mind, pertaining to all the concrete and all the asphalt, all the cars, that builds more heat, that is another contributing factor that is influencing these storms. Instead of them hitting in the middle of a wood somewhere, or a middle of an area that don't have hardly no people living in it, now they're more prone of hitting in these cities than what I've ever seen before. And that's just taking it off of my memory in the past 50 plus years that I can remember, how the things used to be versus how they are today. So yes, there's changes. It's evolving, and it's evolving for the worse, not for the betterment.
The damage across Iowa yesterday with those tornadoes, they occurred where we thought they would. Unfortunately, things are a little more quiet today there. Thanks for joining us here in AccuWeather. Early and Bernie Rayno.
And I'm Ariella Scalise. Wednesday, April 17th. It's important to point out the date, right? As we head into the middle of the month of April, we are into the peak of severe weather season. So scenes like this are not a surprise, but it doesn't make it any easier.
And we used to say that and believe that, but today the peak could be in the middle of November. The peak could be in the middle of December. We really don't know when and where the peak is. We're only going by old data of what the peak used to be. The peak used to be somewhere between basically April and up to about June or July, and then after that things would level out. It no longer does that anymore. It no longer levels out. Today, you're liable to see a massive tornado on Christmas Day. Are you liable to have 75, 80 mile an hour winds that comes down from nowhere that can cause massive fires that can devastate communities, similar towards what went on in Boulder, Colorado a few years ago, that burnt basically 1,000 structures before the moisture content come in behind it, pertaining to a blizzard that actually put the fires out. Strange. Abnormalities. Unusual.
Doesn't make it any easier to see.
Doesn't make it easier to see them, and unfortunately I can tell you we're not done with severe weather as we move forward. Even today, we're a little worried, Ari, and you can see the concern area on our map here this morning. You see that warm front pressing in the western parts of Pennsylvania. Then you have the upper level low near Minneapolis. Look at that little area in between. I'm not going to call it a slice of nice.
No, although it may look nice outside, you step out, you see the sunshine, but sun ahead of a severe weather day is not a good combination. Meanwhile, snow, this is part of our next storm system that we're going to be tracking to bring day 4 of severe weather.
That'll be during the day tomorrow, followed by a lot of colder air that'll be from the Great Lakes states all the way to the Northeast this weekend. Now, preceding that storm, We have a lot of warmth today.
So much warmth. 86, Wichita, Dallas, Houston to the 80s, Jacksonville, Miami into the 80s, and temperatures are going to be going up even more through the end of the week into the weekend.
Our top story today, though, is the powerful storms that spun up severe thunderstorms, hail, and tornadoes over parts of the Mississippi Valley and Midwest. On Tuesday, at least 17 tornadoes have been reported across Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and Iowa, according to the Storm Prediction Center.
All right, I mentioned today's now the third day of severe weather, and it's going to be shifting a bit into the lower Great Lakes regions as well as the Ohio and Tennessee valleys. We're talking about cities such as Detroit, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Cleveland, and Columbus, Ohio, all may be affected by severe weather later today. The total population at risk for severe thunderstorms, over 47 million.
We'll take you live to Cleveland this morning.
47 million people. So these people has a large responsibility on their hands whenever it comes to trying to forecast and forewarn people in what to expect, not just presently, but also futuristically of what's going to occur. That's the reason why that I make these videos and I put out my input in how that God has showed me the variations of things of what they used to be like pertaining to normalcy versus abnormalcy of where we are today. I truly contradict any preacher that wants to be so naive by saying, well, this is God's wrath coming upon to humanity. Trust me, if this was God's wrath coming upon to humanity, you would know the difference, similar towards the Pharaohs, of what they seen again and again and again. I think it was 10 different times before they finally awakened of what was happening to them. And of course, by that time, it was basically too late, because all their firstborn had basically died. After frogs imitated them, after bugs imitated them, after their water turned to blood, after they had all kinds of other stuff that occurred in their lives, they finally awakened to the wrath of God. What we're seeing right now is the wrath of humanity, and we're seeing the planet regurgitate itself upon humanity because of these events. So we are going to have to become even smarter rather than working harder in trying to prevent these things occurring. And right now, I'm talking to China, I'm talking to India, I'm talking to Russia, I'm talking to other superpowers out there that thinks that global warming is some sort of a fluke. I'm talking to people like Donald J. Trump. I'm talking to climate deniers. This is not a fluke. We are seeing a pattern of irregularities that is going off the charts pertaining to the way that things used to be versus the way that they are. And the thing about it is, if we've seen this type of dramaticness happen between just the span of 25, 30, maybe 40 years, could you only imagine what it's going to be like in another 25, 30, 40 years from now? Whenever it talks in the Bible, woe to the inhabitants hereupon to the planet, woe, woe, woe upon to the inhabitants hereupon to the planet, the book of Revelations talks about again and again and again. It is not telling you these things for entertainment purposes. God is trying to alert you, to properly prepare you so that you can get your orders in order. We have done this to ourselves. And unless the world wants to stop in the center of its axis and reverse itself, which I kind of doubt that's going to occur, you would basically have to stop all of humanity from having any type of modern day technology and gizmos and gadgets, and do without refrigerators and do without electricity, and start walking versus riding automobiles. You would basically have to stop humanity in its very tracks to reverse this completely. That's the reason why I say it cannot be reversed. You are on a trajectory. The best that you can hope for is that you will slow it down. We are already on the trajectory. They warned Jimmy Carter before Ronald Reagan became president. that these was going to be the occurrences that was going to take place. Just so happens they wasn't taking place at that time. Just like Al Gore. Al Gore was telling you these was occurrences that he was paying attention to that was taking place and was going to take place, and the people sniggered and laughed. They mocked him the same way that they have mocked me. They mocked me because of me having enough courageousness of being able to stand in front of the Antichrist, or a form of the Antichrist that basically would vanish or disappear completely. Every molecule of my body would instantaneously be changed from mortal to immortal in the twinkling of an eye. People mocked that. They made fun of that. They did not even take under consideration, well, what would it take for somebody to stand in front of somebody and just let them fire a bullet into their chest or a bow and arrow into their chest, and them thinking that they was going to instantaneously vanish? What type of courageousness would it take for an individual to do that? They didn't care. People in Northwest Tennessee didn't care. People up in Washington, D.C. didn't care. That's the reason why I say they talk about peace. The word peace is a very elegant word. Sounds very noble, right? But it's only a word unless it's acted upon. And if you don't act upon it, it's only a word.
But those clouds are beginning to lift a little bit. The other important factor, look at that temperature here. Here we are at 9 o'clock, and it's already near 70 degrees.
Yeah, temperatures are very warm here as that warm front continuing to move on through. And one of the many ingredients we look to for severe weather. Now, it's not record warmth today. It's just obviously warmer than it typically is this time of year. So on our scale from low to significant, I would say the warmth for the ingredients here in a lower category. Same with the moisture.
You keep in mind, it's not just the warmth, it's the lack of coldness. It's an ingredients. Just like adding this and this and this together and making a cake. It's an ingredients. And once you start getting the ingredients off, you got to not only look at the warmth, but you got to look at the lack of the cold pertaining to the icebergs melting and the water level raising the way that it is. You got to look at all the facts. You got to look at all the dots and not just part of the dots. Just like all these big carriers out there that's got trillions of pounds of weight on them, that's carrying stuff all over each continent, all over the planet. You can't tell me that the what's the word I'm looking for? The buoyancy of each one of these vessels that's contributing into the water is not contributing to the risation of the oceans and the seas. Because each vessel that has a buoyancy to it, that goes down into the water, some of them may be 15 foot, some of them 17 foot, some of them may be 30 or 40 foot, depending upon what kind of size load that you got. That buoyancy that goes below the water's edge, that goes down below the water's edge, is a contributing factor to the risation of our oceans and our seas. So don't just look at the icebergs melting. Don't just look at that. Look at all the other activities that's going on the planet that's a contributing factor to that factor. I'm going to end this at this. I'm going to say good luck to each and every one of us in these modern 21st century last and final days here upon to the planet. And say, God bless America, God bless our troops, especially our American military troops, and God bless our endeavors towards where the society goes from this moment on, pertaining to trying to establish peace and utopia that should have been established 30 plus years ago, but was overlooked, but was underrated, that was basically underestimated, that has put us where we are today, not just here in America, but all over the planet. God bless, heaven help us all, and shalom.